Hi, I'm Steve Szajna. I'm an independent engineer and producer from the Metro Detroit area. Today I'm going to show you how to use the icon Qcon Pro X with ProTools.
Okay, so today we're going to take a look around the Qcon Pro X working with ProTools. The Qcon is designed to be able to work with a lot of different DAWs, so there's two important things you need to remember. First is the Qcon communicates with ProTools via the Huey protocol, not MIDI, so there are some differences. And then also, you need to overlay this cool template on the keyboard so that you're pressing the right buttons for the right functions. Then you want to turn it on and make sure it's in the right mode, so let's do that. When you turn it on, you'll see your unit's current version number and then the number of connected Qcons in your setup. We only have one for this demonstration. Once it finishes searching, it'll display your choices for which DAW you want to connect with. Press the Control or Option button until you scroll to the system you're using, and after a moment, the Qcon will accept that as its setup. In this case, ProTools will be selected. ProTools needs to know it's talking to the Qcon Pro X too, so we're going to set that up in the software. Go to the Setup menu, select Peripherals, then click the MIDI tab. Under Type, on the first slot, select Huey. And then under Receive From and Send To, select the Qcon Pro. My experience has been that you want the Qcon Pro active in the first slot and any other keyboards in the slots after that for the whole thing to work properly. Once you hit OK, the lights should light up and the faders should dance, and anything you do on the screen should happen on the Qcon, and anything you do on the Qcon should happen on the screen. Once you're engaged, you've got access to the 8 faders on the Qcon Pro, and they'll work with ProTools in 8-channel banks. The master fader doesn't work with ProTools due to the Huey protocol, but the 8 regular channel faders work as normal. Each of these 8 channels will have its own select button for designating which track you want to control or edit, a mute button for muting that channel, a solo button for soloing the channel, and then the button with the jolly round mark that arms the track for recording. You can see on the screen that when we solo, everything mutes, and when we unsolo, everything unmutes, just as you'd expect. Hitting record will arm the track. Here's the Qcon. It's set up for a session. I have a mixing session loaded. Let's start with some of the navigation controls. First thing you want to deal with is tracks. If I go to the bottom of the machine, I can use the arrows around the zoom key to scroll through and highlight the track that I want to focus on. I can use the mix and edit buttons to select whether the mix or edit window is currently active. And then I can scroll through and highlight tracks with these buttons in either window. There are 2 horizontal LCD displays. The top one, underneath the meters, is going to display information about whichever 8 tracks are currently active. Those active tracks are also highlighted on your screen. Notice the borders around the track names. The second one, just above the faders, doesn't display anything about ProTools, but I've been told that that may change in a future update. Let's take a look up top. The flashing red status button tells you when ProTools and the Qcon Pro X are trading information back and forth. You can also see that when you change what displays in your counter in ProTools, it'll change on the counter on the Qcon Pro X also. So you can view time, time code, bars and beats, or whatever units you prefer. If you go back down to the fader control buttons, you will see a left 8 and a right 8 button. These let you scroll through 8 faders at a time in your session. Next to those are buttons that let you scroll through one channel at a time. So if the tracks you want to work on aren't 1 through 8 or 9 through 16, you use these to tweak which 8 channels you want to control. Notice that the border around the 8 focused tracks will scroll as you press these buttons. Pressing the flip button will flip your faders from controlling channel volume to controlling a send fader on the same channel. Next to it, the lock button locks faders and knobs in place so they can't be altered by accident. Panning is really simple. When the pan button is engaged, the multifunction knobs above each channel let you pan those channels individually. What about stereo tracks that have both left and right channels to pan? I'm going to scroll down to where I have some auxiliaries. I have a drum bus, I've got some reverbs, and my master fader. And I'm going to grab reverb 1 right here, and you can see that the pan light is flashing. So when I turn the knob, it controls the right pan. If I press the pan button so it's not flashing, it assigns the knob to control the left pan. Flashing pan button controls right pan, solid pan button controls left pan. When the pan light goes out, other functions are engaged. Two of the more popular function windows in Pro Tools are the transport window and the memory location window. I'm constantly checking in and out of these, and the Qcon Pro gives you a couple of buttons that let you get to those quickly. Assigning inputs and outputs on your channels is quick using a mouse, but you can also use the Qcon Pro. Press the Assign button, then press the Input button, and then the input choices will be displayed above your channels. Use the multifunction knob to scroll through, and when you get to the one you want, hit Assign again. That selection will be made. Do the same thing with the next track. Assign, press the Input button, scroll through to the choice that you want, then hit Assign again. It's the same process when assigning outputs. You just hit the Output button instead of the Input button. This is also a good time to think about naming your inputs, outputs, and buses in your I/O setup window. Easy to read labels will make your workflow a lot quicker. We already showed you how the arrows around the zoom key can be used to navigate the different tracks. But when you press the zoom button and use the left and right arrow keys, you can zoom in or zoom out of an area in your edit window. If you press the up or down keys, you'll get a taller or shorter waveform displayed in the track. When you click out of the zoom mode, the left and right arrow keys work something like your computer's tab key. So we can tap this until the cursor gets to the front of the clip. Tap it again and it goes to the end of the clip, or it goes to the next edit boundary. When you're in zoom mode, you control the view. When you're out of zoom mode, you're controlling where the cursor goes. If I'm out of zoom mode and I select the tab to transients in my toolbar, I can use the arrow keys to jump between hits of a drum when I'm trying to create a loop or create an edit on the one or something. So left and right arrow keys work like your tab key. If you've ever used any of the hotkey functions on your computer, then you're well familiar with the Command, Shift, Control, and Option keys, and you see that they're here on the Qcon Pro X as well. Most of the time, they function exactly the same. The most notable minor exception is when you have to press one a second time to turn it off. Let's demonstrate with a function called Isolate from Solo. If I solo a track, you can see that all my tracks go into mute except for Reverb 1. You'll notice that the solo button is ghosted. So Reverb 1 doesn't cut out when you solo. How did I get that? First, I press the Command key and the solo button for Reverb 1. Then I hit Command again. Now Reverb 1 is isolated from solo, which is useful when I want to check out my vocal tracks with reverb on them. If I were doing this with my standard keyboard, I would have clicked the Command button and I'd have clicked on the solo button with the mouse, and it does the same thing. To control plugins on the Qcon, select your channel, press the plugin button, it's next to the pan button, then press plugin assign. Now the 4 multifunction knobs will correspond to the first 4 plugin assignment slots of your selected channel, A, B, C, and D. Use the multifunction knob to scroll to the plugin that you want to use. Your installed plugins should list in alphabetical order. I'm going to install the Avid EQ7 because if you have Pro Tools, you have this one. So I'll select EQ7, then press Plugin Assign, and you'll see that it now occupies a plugin slot. You'll have to click on it with your mouse to see the plugin in the screen, so we'll do that. So in this view, the first 4 multifunction knobs are now selecting plugins for the slots. But if you press the 5th one, you can now go into the pages of the parameters for the plugin that you've selected. It's important to remember that the parameters will display differently for each plugin, so take your time reading and learning what the abbreviations for the controlled functions mean. It gets faster as you go. Don't forget, only the first 4 multifunction knobs will correspond to a parameter, but you'll notice that sometimes you'll see an upper and a lower parameter assigned to a particular knob. The lower parameter is adjusted or scrolled by turning the multifunction knob. The upper parameter can be toggled on or off by pressing the multifunction knob. Because there are so many different ways that plugins are laid out, it's usually a good idea to keep the plugin on the screen to avoid confusion while making adjustments. This will become less necessary as you get familiar with your favorites. When I hit the plugin button again, the light goes out and my display is now back to showing my tracks. Let's take a look at some of the other modifier buttons. You've seen the Command, Shift, Control, and Option keys. You also have Read, Write, Touch, Latch, Trim, and Off keys for working with automated mixing modes. The lovely Escape Cancel key will let you cancel out of completing a function that you don't necessarily want to complete. Let's run down the buttons in the Effects section. You'll see the Pan button, the Plugin button, the Plugin Assign button. The Compare button lets you toggle back and forth between plugin settings. The Bypass button will let you bypass the effect of the entire plugin. Remember, the Compare and Bypass buttons won't work unless the Plugin button is active. Sends A, B, C, D, and E are used to assign routing on channel send slots, the same way that you assign inputs and outputs. The in and out buttons are used to select a section of the track for editing or punching in. It reminds me of working with the old analog tape locators. If you select an in and an out point and then stop the transport, then press the loop function, when you hit play again, that selected part will just loop over and over and over again. The punch button activates the quick punch mode that you find in the options menu. When the track is playing, hit the record button to get in and hit the play button to get out. Simple. After you make some changes, you can press the save button twice to save your session data. It works the same as hitting Command S on your keyboard or selecting the save function in the file menu. The save button will light up red as soon as you change one thing from your previously saved session, so don't freak out about it, just remember to save regularly and often. The undo button will undo the last change or edit that you made, and it will undo as many times as you have set in your preferences. The enter button works like the enter button on a keypad, which for ProTools means that you're going to enter a memory location when you hit it. You have the input and output button, and of course the lock button, which locks all the controls in place. That's handy when you or your client is a klutz. The flip button flips between your channel and send faders. The transport button opens the transport window, and the memory lock button opens memory locations. There's a typo on some templates. It's not memory lock, it's memory location. Here again are your scroll 8 buttons, the single scroll buttons, the transport buttons, which include rewind, fast forward, the loop button for activating the loop function, stop, play, and record. The scrub button activates the jog wheel, but because of the Huey protocol, you may find it easier to work with the scrub tool in the tool menu. The zoom button switches between zooming or navigating with the arrows. If the zoom button is flashing, press it again until it's either dark or solidly lit. I hope this has been a useful video and that you've learned a lot about the Qcon Pro X. If you have questions, go to iconproaudio.com for tech support and more information, and they'll be able to help you out. Good luck and have a great day.